Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this man back. He's a movie maker. He's an author. He is a lecturer. He's a really smart dude. It's Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh, how are you? Good to see you.
Hey, Joe, it's always a pleasure.
Can you do me a favor and remind me what your role was with the Reagan administration?
I was a young domestic policy analyst. My office was in the old executive office building right adjacent to the White House.
So when you're working in that administration, did you have a chance to spend any time with him?
I got to stand in the back of the room while the senior staff was around the table. So I didn't interact with Reagan directly, but it was just a wonderful window
Right.
on the way that Reagan governed and the way that he conducted a meeting.
Was he always the way that we saw him on television? Was he always the guy with a story and a smile and I love the country, let's just set that aside. We know I love it. Now let's do what's right for the country. Was he always that guy?
I noticed about him that he had a natural shrewdness to him. And so, for example, in a meeting, he would hold back. He'd allow people to really hash it out and debate and sometimes get kind of heated.
Yeah.
And he would only step in at the end. I think he realized that if he were to intervene in the discussion himself, and sometimes people would look at him like, well, what do you think?
Right.
It would tilt everybody else's opinions toward him. And he didn't want that to happen. He wanted people to speak frankly, but I think at the end of it, he was like, all right, having taken it all into consideration, here's what I think. And I kind of, having heard you out, I now expect you to sort of go along with what I eventually decide.
It's Dinesh D'Souza. Go and get his movie called Vindicating Trump. It's over on the website, vindicatingtrump.com. The book is available as well, vindicatingtrump.com. Dinesh, you didn't know I was going to start there, but I started there for a couple of reasons. First of all, you and I both know Donald Trump personally, and we know that he's a really nice guy. We know that he's done very generous things for people. We know that he is not the caricature that they make him out to be. But I feel like Donald Trump, when he's on the rally stage, is a little different than Donald Trump that you know off of the rally stage. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think there are two different, I don't know, personas maybe. And with Reagan, I wondered if there was that as well, but there wasn't.
I think with Reagan, the public persona and the private man were very much the same. If Reagan was sitting with us at dinner, he would tell the same jokes that he had told up on the stage. Right. He would cock his head in the same way. With Trump, however, you may make a good point. Trump is a little bit over the top. He's bombastic and narcissistic in public. His rallies aren't just big. They have to be like the biggest rallies ever,
yes,
and so on. And it's a shtick. I think people are now recognizing that that is a performance that he puts on. He's a bit of a stand-up comedian, and
yes,
he's like an over-the-top salesman. On the other hand, in private, he's not narcissistical. He's whimsical. He's self-deprecating. He shows a lot of genuine interest in people, including people who are, beneath him. I mean, a doorman, a cab driver, and all of that suggests it's the very opposite of what you'd expect from someone who is like totally full of himself.
No, it's true. The last time I interviewed him, and I hope to have him on before the election again, off the air, I said, my mother-in-law, Renee, is from Saginaw, Michigan, huge fan. We lost my father-in-law recently. And I said, would you say something to her? He said, great. Is she on the line now? The former president thought I had my mother-in-law on the line with him as we were doing the interview, and he was ready to talk to her. So, Dinesh, I mean, people don't know that about this guy, and you exposed that in the movie, right?
Yes, I try very hard. You have to do it in a tricky way because if you go the Dr. Phil route and try to psychologize Trump, like listen, put him on the couch, so to speak, and go, how did the assassination attempt make you feel? You'll notice he'll run away from that. He won't go there. So what you have to do is ask him questions that make him think. And then he will reveal a part of himself that he doesn't customarily reveal. And I think it actually is very attractive. It endears him even more to people because they're like, wow, I hadn't seen that side of Trump.
Yeah. You and I talked about this as the movie was starting to come out, and we always appreciate your time and access. And you said going into this interview, and again, you know him. It's not like he's a stranger. We all know of him, but you know him better than most. But going in, you're a bit apprehensive. How do you go at this interview with this guy and get from him what you want from him as the real guy? Not because of the lights and the cameras, not because of the microphones, and it's going to be in a movie, just a couple of guys talking. Did you achieve that, do you think?
I think so. And the reason is this. Debbie had warned me. My wife warned me. She said, look, you have 45 minutes, Dinesh, but you'll be lucky to get in 3 questions because Trump kind of is a runaway train. He's got a shtick and he's going to go into it. And so I tried to stage it by sitting the two of us very close to each other. I wanted him to let me control the pace of the interview. And I tried to surprise him a little bit in a way that would get people to see his mind working. And so, for example, a sample question I posed to him would go something like this. You were accused of calling for an insurrection. I said to Trump, I said, and as far as I can see, you didn't do that. You didn't tell people to go in the Capitol or take over the place or stop the count or any of that. I said, but guess what? Had you called for an insurrection, there would have been one, a real one. And
Right.
there'd be one if you called for one today. And you can see Trump, his eyes widen with surprise. Then you can see him mouthing the word true. You don't
Wow.
hear it, but you just see that he's saying it. He's acknowledging. So the point I'm getting to him is that he has a singular kind of power. I mean, it's not an accident that the left keeps calling him a dictator because he has a larger than life dimension to him.
Yeah.
But my point is, and this was the thrust of my question, what do you intend to do with that power? And his answer is very illuminating.
Well, I can't wait to see it. That's for sure. It's vindicatingtrump.com, vindicatingtrump.com. That's the movie and the book by Dinesh D'Souza. You know, when you're watching President Trump out there, I understand why he needs to be vindicated in the hearts and minds of many in America because of how he's been completely sullied and smeared. But Dinesh, one thing that jumps out at me, I'm not sure that you and I have talked about this. We have never seen in our lifetimes, I think we're about the same age, we've never seen somebody try to take out a former president, not once, but twice. Never seen somebody try to take out a nominee other than Robert F. Kennedy Jr., but it was successful. It wasn't like 2 times on the campaign trail. It was the biggest story. We still talk about it now. That's from 1968. Nobody's talking about the fact that somebody tried to kill this guy twice in the past 2.5, 3 months. Nobody. Dinesh, I was in news for a very long time in my career. I won awards in journalism. This would be the top story every night for about a year. Nobody's talking about it. How did they get away with that?
The reason that they are not talking about it is that it is the media's character assassination that has provided the logical and the psychological foundation for these 2 assassination attempts. I mean, if you, Joe, make a short tally of all the assassinations and assassination attempts through history, you mentioned Lincoln. JFK. There was an assassination attempt against Teddy Roosevelt. We all know about John Hinckley, who tried to kill Reagan. But
Yes.
Guess what? In all those cases, in none of those cases did you have 8 years of the opposing party making uninterrupted comparisons of a person with dictators, with Hitler, with being an existential threat to democracy, to the country. In other words, we're providing kooks with a complete rationale for wanting to take Trump out. And so there's a connection between the character assassination, the lawfare or legal assassination, and finally the 2 actual assassination attempts.
Well, they actually outed themselves the day that it happened. I mean, the CNN headline was loud pop and Trump falls down. I mean, it was all very strange. The teleprompter glass is what got him. It wasn't really the bullets and nothing to see here. Some said, was there really a bullet? Was that real blood? I mean, Dinesh, these are people that you and I 20, 30 years ago would say is a news outlet. When we saw the Iraq war start, we all watched Bernie Shaw crawling, in his hotel room on CNN. We thought these were really outlets. And do you think that they took that power and that trust that they once had and they've overused it now? Is America waking up going, I'm not going to buy what you're saying anymore? Doesn't make any sense.
I mean, the best proof of what you're saying, Joe, is that now at the very last stage of the campaign, they've pulled out the Hitler card, right? And they're trying to present it as an explosive bombshell that Trump expressed admiration for Hitler's generals. And notice the kind of blasé reaction of the American people. It's ho-hum. It's no big deal.
True.
They have used the Hitler card so often that we have all become, not to use a COVID analogy, but we've all become immunized against it.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. It's Dinesh D'Souza. Go to vindicatingtrump.com. Get this movie. Get the book. You'll learn exactly what they've tried to do to Donald Trump and why vindication makes perfect sense. As we watch it all unfold about a week and a half before the election, I know that you're not far from. I wonder if maybe you'll go today. Kamala Harris is going to be in town with Beyonce. You and Debbie going to stop by? Dinesh, why do you think she's doing that? She has no chance to win Texas. Is it to help Allred? What's going on here?
It's an extremely strange move, and we're seeing a lot of indications that that the momentum of this race is now swinging heavily and decisively in Trump's favor. I'm always cautious about this because all of us have a little bit of PTSD from the 2020 election.
Oh, yes.
And so we're going to wait until the final count is in. But I think what's really happening is that the masks are falling off. And what I mean by that is that the left had put a kind of Halloween mask on Trump. He's this horrific ogre. And to a degree, it works because the mainstream media reaches independent voters in a way that conservative media doesn't really penetrate. So for a while, they buy into it. But after a while, the mask falls off. The real Trump shows himself and they go, wait, this guy's genuinely funny. No, dictator for a day, that's like a Bob Hope one-liner. That's not an aspiration for him to actually be a dictator for 24 hours. So people go like, no, so that mask is off. And then the Kamala mask, which is the opposite mask, the idea that Kamala Harris is Cinderella, she's this new and wonderful person, she's not the person you think she is, that mask is falling off as the real Kamala, the deer in the headlights, the vacant upstairs, the annoying laugh. All of that is that people are reminded of why they didn't like her in the first place.
Yes.
So with the two masks falling off, I think the decision is becoming quite clear.
It's Dinesh D'Souza. Go and get everything he does. VindicatingTrump.com is the website for the movie and for the book Vindicating Trump. Yeah, you're right. She was on CNN the other day and was handed on a silver platter just the most complicit questions from Anderson Cooper. Hey, if you made any mistakes in your life, what did you learn from them? And her answer is something about raising kids. She didn't have any kids. And then she said something to the effect of, it would have been a mistake had I not done the smart thing I did by learning about the issues. So I avoided a mistake there. Or, what is one thing that you'll change from, well, I'm not Joe Biden. Dinesh, it doesn't make sense. Even the people who are her biggest supporters on national network news that, as you said, has access to the independent voters better than conservative outlets do, they're failing. They're trying to put her on their shoulders and she won't get up there.
Well, let me put this in context, Joe. One of the problems in the old regime when you had monarchies was when the king would have like an idiot son, right? Because that guy would inherit the throne, but what can you do? He's next in line and he's an idiot, right? What happened here is that with the Democrats now, we have a regime that's really running the country. And those guys thought that their front man or their front woman is interchangeable. It's Biden. Once he gets too obviously bumbling, let's move him out. Let's move in Kamala Harris. Who cares? Because we are the ones that are making the real decisions. But what's happened is that at least for this brief election period, she does have to show herself to the American people. And it turns out she's an unmitigated disaster. So the powers that be are panicking because they were like, yeah, we thought we had this under control. Yeah. She's supposed to be in the canoe, but we are the ones steering the canoe. And the American people are looking at it and going, we don't like this arrangement.
Yeah, I want you to comment on this because you just took me there. When we saw Kamala Harris on the campaign stage in 2019 calling Joe Biden on the debate stage a racist to his face, and then suddenly Biden says, I'm gonna pick somebody who's a black female, which completely disqualifies 93% of the population, chooses her who called him a racist a few weeks earlier. She allegedly changes all of her policies, but yet never gained any momentum in likability. For 4 straight years now, she's been one of the most unlikable or unliked vice presidents we've ever had in our history. Dinesh, did they really think in 75 days they could remake her?
I think they intended to go with Biden. And when Biden became impossible and indefensible, they were then faced with the problem of, I think they would have liked to leapfrog over her. But they realized that having bought into identity politics and having cultivated identity politics as the basis for membership in the progressive coalition, there was no easy way to do that. And so I think they threw up their hands and they, probably with their own overconfidence said, that's all right. She's a bit of a dummy, but she can be our ventriloquist dummy. We will tell her what to say and later tell her what to do. And the problem is that the ventriloquist dummy is sort of on a course on her own. And people can see that without the ventriloquist, you just got a dummy.
Well, and at some point, the script gets really, really tired and old. I grew up a middle-class girl. No, you weren't. You grew up in Montreal, Canada. I was a single mother. Well, yes, single mother, but you went to a rich high school in Canada. You went to a rich college in Canada. Then somehow you went to Howard. I don't even know how that happened. She wants us to believe she grew up a poor child in Oakland, California, when her dad was a high-paid professor and her mom became a biologist. So, Dinesh, the story isn't resonating, especially not resonating positing with the minority populations that might overwhelmingly vote for Trump coming, a week from Tuesday. So as we're watching, what do they do? In Europe, you've watched a lot of these campaigns. What can the Harris campaign possibly do other than hope that Trump doesn't make it? What do they do?
I think it's down to the extreme demonization of Trump. I mean, they know that.
But it's not working, as you said. They're failing
working.
horribly.
Yeah. Election fraud. I mean, you might have seen just today the case of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
They're going to have to try to go to any means necessary. So even though I think that we are dealing with a cornered animal, I think that cornered animals are very dangerous because they're going to leap out at you. They're going to strike out with their claws. So we can expect a fairly rocky 10 days leading up to Election Day. And this is a reflection not of the fact that Kamala is doing well, but she's doing far worse than Democrats were doing in 2020 or in 2016.
Can you believe that she was offered to go on Rogan as well on a separate thing and said no? It's the largest podcast on the planet. Why do you say no to that, do you think? Because she would have to have a conversation and not stick to the talking points? Why turn that down?
Because I think her staff doesn't trust her. I think they realize that going on Rogan could be the biggest disaster of her life. Because think about it, even with Bret Baier, she thought she was with a friendly reporter. And that's why she said things like, well, you know what I mean, don't you, Brett? It's kind of the way dictators talk to their courtier press. It's sort of like, it's a wink, wink, because the dictator expects the courtier press to genuflect and bow and applaud. Yeah. And when Bret Baier goes, well, I really don't know what you're talking about, that was a real moment. And so they're afraid that moment would be multiplied tenfold or 100-fold if she sat down for an hour or two, or let alone the full 3 hours with Rogan. It could be a bloodbath.
It really could be. And to that point about Bret Baier, with Anderson Cooper the other night, she at one point said, Anderson, you and I know things that they don't know. That's why. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And again, I think she thought he would be complicit, but Anderson Cooper almost had a journalistic accident the other night, like he was sticking to his guns. Do you like the wall? Is the wall stupid or not? She wouldn't say that it was, but she wants to build some of the wall. Dinesh, I appreciate you coming back on. I want everybody to go and check out Vindicating Trump, either the book or the movie. What can you do? Can you download it, watch it digitally? Can you get it on a DVD? How do you get this?
All of the above. It's streaming. You can download it. You can get DVDs, and vindicatingtrump.com is the website. The book's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. As you know, I like to do this 1-2 punch where I lay out the storyline in the book, and then I do the argument the storyline in the movie, and then I do the argument in the book.
So go and get both. Get the book, get the movie right now, vindicatingtrump.com. It's Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh, thanks a million. Appreciate you.
Joe, it's always a pleasure.
All right, brother. We're back after this. Stay right here.